to the first of many concerts for you. An opportunity to see where they start. That's the fun part, because after you see where they start, in about 8 more years you will be stunned at what they can do. You probably are stunned even now. You're thinking, how did they get to the point that they can play so good in such a short amount of time? I am Mr. Sager. I'm the music teacher, I'm the band director, and the overall strange guy that they usually come home and talk about out here. And I try to make music fun, because last time I checked, most people like music. So it seems like music should be something that we enjoy when we come to school. So I'm glad that we get an opportunity to do that. That one was called Count and Play, which is a major accomplishment, to count and play and do it all together. We're going to continue now with a song called Two's a Team. Because we don't want to have them all stand up and look like those funny birds rocking back and forth, the director generally kind of says, for them, I'm saying thank you for your applause. So just to clear that up in case you weren't aware of that. I would like to introduce the first of our sections with the flute players. Please stand. The flautists playing the silver sticks are part of the woodwind section, which makes no sense because they're metal. But they're actually based off of an original instrument called the fife, which was made out of wood, so they put it in the wood section. You'll see the head joint, the top part that has that little lip plate, they blow across the opening, which makes it unlike any other instrument in the band. When they blow across it, it splits the airstream in half and spins it down through the instrument, which is what causes the instrument to vibrate. And when you hear something, what you're really doing is sensing that something is moving, because it's actually sending up vibrations. So if you're standing on one side of a large field and there's somebody hammering and you hear the hammer, your ear can sense that there's something moving as much as 2 or 3 miles away, which is actually phenomenal when you think about that. Now, this is much like a pop bottle when you blow it in. Okay, a pop bottle would have been the glass things that they used to put pop in a long time ago, but most of us don't know what that is anymore. But if you have one of those, dusty kind of up, Mountain Dew, one of those classic ones, you can take it down and try it. It's amazing. You really can make some fun noises out of that. The flute players have lots of awkward fingerings. As a matter of fact, one of the first 5 fingerings that they learned, they have the most difficult fingering change, because everything that's down goes up, and everything that's up goes down. And it's horrendous to play. I had to learn it in college, and I have to say, of all the instruments I learned, I hated playing the flute. I couldn't stand it. Loved to listen to it. Couldn't stand to play. Of course, I'm a tuba player, and I don't have to use 3 fingers, so that would explain why I had so much trouble with it. So our flute players are doing a fine job. They are not a loud instrument, but they actually create an opportunity to soften the overall sound of band with what they play. So although you may not physically go, oh, I hear a flute, you might be listening and noticing that we have a more gentle sound, and that's what the flutes bring to the band. They offer that opportunity to hear that more mellow sound. Flutes, you may sit. You did a nice job standing. We are going to continue now with a song called Moving On Up. If I didn't stop and talk between the songs, we would be out of here in about 7 minutes. So it is important that I offer these bits of useless information that hopefully is entertaining as well. We continue now with the licorice stick players, the Benny Goodman players, the clarinet players. Would they stand up, please? The clarinets are the only instrument made of wood, but Most of these are actually made out of plastic, so there goes that idea. The woodwind instruments of the clarinet section, ladies, would you turn the clarinets around so they can see the wood reed at the top, that light-colored reed at the top? That reed is found and can only be grown in one place in the world, in France. And so that's why the reeds are a little more expensive, because that's the only place that they can get this white reed to grow. Now, you can use other reed, but it's brown and it looks bad, and people don't want to stick that in their mouth, so nobody buys it. So they can't make a market for it. But that's why they're a little bit pricey. The clarinets are much like a recorder. The fact that as you cover holes, the air goes further down the instrument. The longer it goes, the lower the pitch. That's a general rule of thumb when it comes to instruments. The longer something is, the lower it is. Think of piccolo, think of tuba, and you got the picture. The clarinets have a reed, and they blow across the reed, and it vibrates. And as it moves back and forth, it makes an annoying squeaking noise. Ladies, would you please take the mouthpiece of the barrel off of the instrument, and stick the mouthpiece in your mouth and blow. Go ahead, let's get it. You have permission. Oh, come on, let me hear it. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, you can go back to that over again. I think one person might need a re-put on. I told them, I said, I learned a long time ago, the best thing you can do is the very first concert, do something you're not expecting. Because that's the way things go for musicians all the time. You never know what's going to happen at a concert, so we keep them guessing along the way. The woodwind instruments, these are made out of plastic. Clarinet parents, I did that on purpose because wood instruments crack and are ruined in freezing weather. So in 4 more years, when they're out in the marching band in the cold and everything, I had you buy an instrument that you could continue to use out in the cold because plastic doesn't crack. All right, if you want to get a nicer wood instrument for concert band later, then the option's available, but you don't have to. This one will get you all the way through high school. That's why we do that. Ladies, we are continuing now with a song called 4x4. Saxophone's invented by a gentleman named Adolf Sax. He named it after himself, a German, in the mid-1800s. He looked at the clarinet and said, this is a really great start, but I think I can make it better. Kind of like the $6 Million Man. Anybody who's that old? Anybody remember that show? Oh, wow! Cool! I'm not as old as I thought I was. The saxophone has been rekeyed to make it easier to learn the fingerings. It has been designed to make it easier to play, and it was made out of metal, a design of metal that allowed it to be able to keep up with the brass section. So if you see a jazz band, you know, the classic big band jazz band, you see a row of trumpets, a row of trombones, and a row of saxophones, because they're the only woodwind instruments that can keep up with the brass when it comes to volume. And that's why when you listen to a live jazz band, it's usually quite loud when they decide to open it up and let you have it. They have a great deal of power and strength in them. Our saxophones, just the 4 of them alone, can outblow the rest of the entire band. They've demonstrated it for us a few times, where you've had to ask them to stop. So they have the same thing, wood reed, it vibrates, they cover holes, the air goes down, further it goes down, the lower the pitch, same basic concept, only they just do it with metal instead of with wood. Thank you, you may have some. Now so far, all the songs we've been playing, we've been adding yet another note, and so we now add the 5th of our 5 new notes that we first started with, and this song is called The Fabulous Vibe. brass section. The power, the strength. When you go to an Ohio State University game and you hear the marching band play, they have a very distinctive sound because the Ohio State marching band is actually modeled after the traditional brass bands of England, and there are no woodwinds to soften their sound, which is why you put 220 or 240 or so of them out on the field playing brass instruments, and they make quite a bit of noise. Trumpets, would you please stand up? They would be our lead people. They would be the ones that would carry the melody during marching band season and concert band as well. They would be the ones that when you're sitting up in the stands and they want you to really hear it, you'll all of a sudden see all these little gold and silver bells go like this and point right in your face like you're looking down the horn of a loudspeaker, and your hair goes back and you're like, there it is. They are a directional instrument. They make their sound not by vibrating or splitting the airstring, but by buzzing their lips. So trumpets, would you remove the mouthpiece? And please demonstrate for us the sound of a buzzing trumpet mouthpiece. Music to my ears. Once we place it onto the instrument, it takes that rather raw, obnoxious sound and controls it and directs it and tunes it in until you end up with a really nice sound. Or at least that's what we're working towards right now. Our trumpets have a great deal of strength in their sound as well. They've learned how to harness that and control it. But those of you that are trumpet parents, you'll notice that as we work into the upper registers, the volume of the practicing sometimes increases because it takes more air to get the higher notes to come out, and more work. Sometimes you'll be listening and then all of a sudden you'll kind of hear this really loud sound, and if you were in my room and they did that, I would be going, yes, that's it! Because they were actually hitting the right pitch. At first, it takes a great deal of volume and air to get that note to come out. As the muscles in the face get stronger, then they can control that and get a nicer sound. But first, they've got to just go for it. So, I don't know, basement, acoustic tile, something to kind of get you through this time period, but we will survive, and you'll be glad you did. Trumpets, you may have a seat. We continue now with a song called First Flight. Our first song that does not have the little notes written underneath or in the notes, where they have to actually be able to look at the little dot and the doohickey on the lines and the thingamabob and know what they're supposed to do. Things become a little more interesting. It's like now instead of just having bread and butter, we've added some salami, maybe some mayonnaise, maybe a tomato, so we're getting a little more flavor in there. It's getting a little more enjoyable to listen to as we add those things. Next, we have a section that is near and dear to my heart. The only bass clef instruments, meaning the only low instruments in the band, are trombone section. Trombone, sometimes known as the slip horn, has a slide to change the pitch. Remember I said longer equals lower? Well, they're going to demonstrate that for you right now by putting the whole instrument up to your face. You're going to start in a first position F, and I want you to go and just slide out while you play. I know you've done it at home, so now's your chance. Ready? Trombones, go. And now start out at the end and come back in. See? It's a great way to demonstrate for kindergartners that longer equals lower in music, because they can see the slide go down. They're like, oh, it really does make it lower. The trombone section is just like the trumpet. As a matter of fact, the trumpets originally were little tiny slide trombones. They were about that long. You sat there and played it like this. And then somebody got the great idea of valves, and so then that kind of changed the format. But the trombones continue to keep that slide approach. The fact that it goes down, it makes one turn, comes back, makes one more turn, and goes out, makes it the most powerful of brass instruments. I've often wondered if I tried playing loud enough if I could actually peel wallpaper off the wall with it. I think we could get awfully close because they can play extremely loud. They are a springboard for tuba and baritone, where they're low brass instruments that will be in the high school as you get a little further along. But they provide the lower range to kind of fill out that bottom. Otherwise, it just kind of sounds hollow. It'd be kind of like building the second floor of your house, but not building the first floor. It just doesn't work so good. So we need that foundation to help us out. Makes that down as well. Thank you. The next song we're going to play is a real song. It's our first real song, brought to you one of the most famous songs ever put out. The hit classic, Merrily Roll Along, Mary Had a Little Lamb, and about 7 other titles to the song. People are thinking, Mary Had a Little Lamb, how easy can that get? But you'll notice that it's Psalm number 14 in the book. There's a reason why it's Psalm number 14. In order to play Mary Had a Little Lamb, you've got a lot to learn. If you think about it, as they go from the first note to the second note, they have less than 1 second to figure out what the next note is, know what the fingering is, switch to it, and play that pitch. Now, once they've done that, they're not out of the woods because they've got another less than 1 second to figure out the next note and switch that fingering and play that pitch. And so the first measure, D, da, 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 D. Now we finally have 3 notes in a row. So it takes a second measure before you finally settle into an easy part of the song. It's surprisingly difficult, isn't it, guys, when you first learn to play? You're like, wow, Mary Had a Little Lamb. Who would have ever guessed? Our final section, I would ask them to stand, but they're already standing. They would be our percussionists at the back. Now, the fact that there is a bell set and a snare drum makes them percussionists. If we had just 2 snare drums, they would just be called drummers, whereas some directors sometimes refer to them as dummers, because percussionists generally annoy band directors. I don't know what it is, but it's been that way for years, and I don't expect it to change, except this year, I don't have any percussionists. They're like, really nice guys, I like them. Give me a hand. One of the reasons why I'm really into percussion this year is they have accepted my teaching about the bells and have not said, I don't want to play the stupid ding dong things, I want to play the drums. They've accepted that responsibility, they've learned both, and that's what we want them to do. Because when you see a percussion section, they've got to be able to play the bass drum, cymbals, triangle, glockenspiel. In one song by John Philip Sousa, they have to play the Colt 45 revolver with plates. It really is written into the part. Bang, 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 bang to the rhythm of the song. So they have to be able to play everything. So the fact that they've accepted the responsibility for every song that these guys learn, those 2 have to learn 2. They have to learn one on the snare drum and one on the bells. So their practice time takes longer, a lot more involved in it. But of course, when you hit that marching band, you hear that as they're coming up closer, it's like, the band's coming. They don't do that with the brass or the woodwinds. It's the percussion section that they hear. So they get to have a lot of fun as well. So our percussion section fills in the rhythm and a lot of other things, just anything we call upon them to play. I've seen drummers play the brake drum from the 57 Chevy. Really, that would be whatever it is they play. Our next song is going to be a song called Hot Cross Buns. interesting history. It was the first advertising gimmick. The people in the 1700s that lived in England, the bread maker would make bread every day because the bread would basically rot or go stale. And so you would have to go to the bread store to buy your bread every day. And so they had a particular type of thing. It was called a hot cross bun because it was just a bun. And it was real hard, kind of like Panera hard. And so they would split this way and this way, make a cross on the top of it. And that would make it easier to break open to get to the soft stuff. And that was called the hot cross bun. Well, apparently somebody out there got the bright idea, why not take the bread store to the customers? And so they made this little cart, and they would wheel the cart through the streets of England and London and stuff like that, and they would, sell their goods. So apparently the competitor didn't like the fact that he was delivering them door to door, so he hired a singer to deliver door to door, but instead of just usual thing, this guy actually, instead of going, "Get your hot cross buns here, hot cross bun," he came through singing the first jingle. Yes, hot cross buns, one a penny, two a penny, hot cross buns. People went, ooh, dinner and show. Great, we'll take the hot cross buns. So it was an advertising gimmick used strictly to try to advertise the fact that they were selling hot cross buns. And we have a song that we play 200 years later for no apparent reason except it's simple and there's not a lot of notes involved. We're going to continue now with Go Tell Aunt Rhoda. It's a beautiful song. It says, go tell Aunt Rhody, go tell Aunt Rhody, go tell Aunt Rhody, the old gray goose is dead. Such pleasant songs we have for our kids, kind of like Rockabye Baby on the Treetop, When the Wind Blows, the Cradle will rock. When the bough branch breaks, the cradle will fall, and down will come baby cradle and all. Just a beautiful song to think, especially when you see little kids are up there falling to their death from the cradle. Half the songs you hear that are children's songs, if we really pay attention to the lyrics, the ACIU would not allow us to ever sing them as children because it would mess us up for the rest of our lives. We continue with Go Tell Aunt Rhody about the dead goose. I do need to mention at this time, if your son or daughter comes from home and says, Mr. Sager said, we don't have to practice anymore. Don't need to do the practice schedules, it's okay, really. He said, it's fine, I don't need to do that anymore. They are either been struck by something in the head and not thinking clearly or lying through their teeth. Must be the first option, because these are great kids and they would never lie to you, I know that. Now, things like spring break, I might say you only need to do 1 week of practicing over the next 2 weeks. I'll give them a break like that, okay? But I'll never tell them we're done practicing, because that never happens. So I just thought I'd give you the heads up with them listening, so they know not to try that one, because we're all wise to it. I like to do that on the first concert. The next song we're going to do is actually going to be called March Steps, and it kind of jumps back and forth and skips around, which makes it more of a challenge. They've got patterns in their mind now as far as this note normally goes to this note, and this one goes to that one. And so now we're kind of jumping around and changing on them, and that makes it a little more difficult. So we keep turning up just a little bit. Once they get something down, it's kind of like the weightlifter that's sitting there just about the time that he's doing this really good, the coach comes over and moves the pin down a notch and goes, oh! Okay, so you'll find that they are constantly being slightly frustrated, but in the process, they're also constantly growth. The key is to have the right amount of success to frustration ratio so that they continue to get better and want to, but still not be so easy as to sit back and enjoy themselves and never feel like they have to practice again. If I leave that on, then it tends to get feedback, so I have to keep turning it off because sometimes I forget. In all seriousness, the practicing with this group is one of the most consistent I've seen in a lot of years, as far as overall looking down top to bottom on the grade sheets. Not just getting good grades, but having a high percentage of them turning them in on a regular basis, which is something that I've not had sometimes. Sometimes I have students that just kind of don't want to do it, and mom and dad are just kind of tired of the fight. I get that. That's why it's part of the grade, to try to make it easier on you guys. But it's a nice group of students that are consistently turning the stuff in and doing a nice job of working together. I enjoy having them in class. It's one of those things that I look forward to at the end of the day. It's a nice way to end my day, having them in class. We're going to continue with a song called Listen to Our Section. We talked about the woodwinds, flutes, clarinets, and saxophones, first two rows. We talked about the brass in the back row. We talked about the percussion understanding. This will be our first and only song we play without the accompaniment, and we will actually get a chance to hear them play just by themselves, and you'll hear each one of the sections coming in and playing a part. This is deceptively hard. It's difficult to sit for 4 or 8 beats and then boom, try to play, and then sit back after 4 beats and wait, and then play again. That's actually harder to do than if you just play the entire song all the way through. So you'll notice we spent a lot of time on this one. It's been a long day. Now I'm going to tell on somebody, me. When I started them off, I did not do it exactly the way I normally have. And my bell player took one of my conducting pattern to be the start. It was supposed to be 1 beat later, but that was my fault. And most importantly, everybody else made the adjustment and kept going. And had I not told you that, you would not have known that happened, would you? And I'm only telling you that because I want you to realize that that's a very high-end thing to do. We call that recovery. That's the guy flying the plane that bumps the stick and you start heading to the ground, but you don't want him to go, oh well, you want him to grab the stick and recover from the mistake. That's what they did. I made a mistake, they recovered from it, and I thought it would be good to go ahead and tell them that because they did a nice job on that. Give them a hand for that. At this point, I always like to take the time to thank the administration and Mrs. Coleman setting aside the schedule so that I've got a half an hour at the end of the day to work with the band, the 5th grade teachers that work their schedules around what we do. There's a lot that goes into making this happen. Certainly you as parents and families that support them, encourage them to practice, and all the stuff that I know sometimes isn't a lot of fun. And certainly our students that have worked really hard and done a nice job. Even showing up, dressed up and looking nice. Something as simple as that can be a bit of a problem, I know. So I appreciate that, we recognize that. We are going to close now with a song called Lightly Row. And I want to tell you about a tradition that was started by a gentleman named John Philip Sousa. John Philip Sousa was the conductor of the United States Marine Corps Band. This gentleman came in, and the Marine Corps Band was the laughing stock of the world. They were a bunch of bums, most of them were drunks. They were terrible players, and at the time that he was there, he took that from being this group of loser musicians to literally the president's own. They became the band that the United States president calls upon to fly to Pakistan when he goes there to play Hail to the Chief as he comes off the plane. They play for the inaugural balls for dignitaries from all over the world. It is the most elite group, and these people will go through Marine Corps boot camp and risk having a rifle shoved in their hands, even though they're a musician, and said, "You weren't good enough, you'll have to be a Marine now." For the chance to be a part of the Marine Corps Band, it's the most elite band in the world. Everybody knows that. Well, John Philip Sousa was responsible for this amazing, phenomenally brilliant man. When he wrote a song, he wrote all the parts, top to bottom, one note at a time. He wrote the entire song in one sitting. He didn't just write the melody out, add some chords, and then change it later. If you know anything about music, that takes an amazing brain to be able to do something like this. He was a genius, literally. Well, John Philip Sousa had extremely high standards. On a day that he felt that his band was playing exceptionally well, he would, and he didn't tell the audience this, but he would start the song and then he'd walk off stage and let them play it by themselves. And he just let them know, if I walk off stage, you did good. And that was how he told them thank you. He wasn't a man of many words, he just kind of took care of business. And so that's a tradition that band directors learn. And so if you're ever at a concert and you see the band director at the last song turn and walk off stage, they're not disgusted with the group. They're actually saying, really nice job this today. Once again, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. We thought we'd try to put it on a conference night, so we kind of just blew one whole evening completely instead of punching holes in a bunch of uniques for you. Thank you for what you do to make this happen, and thank you, students, for an outstanding concert tonight. You did a great job. Let's give them one more round.